Welcome to Rushdie Explains. My name is Rushdie Tiptup. I'm here to explain the life cycle of stars. Now, in the beginning, before stars are formed, there's usually clouds of dust and gas. Now, this dust and gas, uh, in order for it to form the stars that we know of, the gravity collapses on itself towards the center. It's getting hotter and hotter, denser and denser, until all the particles inside of it stick together. Now, when it starts to stick together, we see that like the hydrogen and helium are starting to fuse, and it's creating abundance of energy, and that is what fuels a star, and that is called fusion. Now, in the beginning of a star's life, it is in a delicate balance. There is the gravity that's inside that wants to collapse on itself, you know, extinguish the star. Then there's the outward pressure. The outward pressure of the outward pressure, the pressure of the fusion reactions at the core. Now, when a star first is formed, it matters on its mass. Everything about a star depends mostly on its mass. Now, the mass of the star determines its age, how long it can last, and also its spectral class. Now, so the spectral class is where a star fits on a HR diagram in a fact. So there are four spectral classes. There's the super low mass stars, there's the low medium stars, there is the medium to high mass stars, then there's the huge to, mostly it's just like big stars, like fat stars. Now, in the super low mass stars, there's only two cycles. There's the protostar. This is where it begins. This is where it's like showing that it has energy. It's fusing. It's making abundance of energy because of the fusion between hydrogen and helium. And then the second stage is the brown dwarf. Now, the brown dwarf stage is when the star fails. It's a failed star. Bye bye. You failed. Sorry, man. That's basically what happens with super low mass stars. They don't really last long, but they are in the first, beginning of their stage. They're very abundant in light. Now, when we get to the low star, medium stars, mass stars, we see that they last longer. We see that the proto stage, the beginning, obviously. Then we see the main sequence. The main sequence is kind of like what our sun's at the moment. It is showing, it is fusing, creating abundance of energy. Doesn't look like it will go out for a while. This stage is where most of the now back to the main sequence star. I kind of went out of there for a second. Um, the main sequence star is kind of like the adult phase, like what our star's at. Our sun is that its adult phase. It's going through the motions. This is where like stars usually spend 90% for the low to medium mass stars, where they spend like nearly 90% of their life in the main sequence. Now, so with these stars, with this main sequence stars, this is where they will look like they won't be running out of energy. They'll continue in abundance. This mostly applies with others, but as we continue on uh, seeing how they continue throughout their life, usually it takes a few billion years until we see what happens. Um, we get to sadly, we get to the red giant stage. This is when it's the core exhausts its hydrogen molecules. It runs out of it, and it seems to get bigger, like huge, like fat huge. And we can see that it's like less bright. Well, yes, less bright, a little bit cooler. It got bigger, but dimmer in a sense. But from what we can see so far, it looks like it's still thriving. It's like it's gonna be there for a while, but that's when we get to the planetary nebula. The planetary nebula is kind of like how we began when stars first formed, just clouds of dust and gas. Seems like everything's just separating, but we would think that it's like it's not working out. The star seems like it's gonna fail, probably go boom or something. But this is the low to medium mass stars. Now, the next stage is white dwarf. The white dwarf star. Now, the white dwarf stars. As I said with the planetary nebula, it's kind of like an explosion of the outer layer. All that's left is kind of the core. It's a cloud of dust and gas. Not the core, but the outer layer that got exploded. Now, with the white dwarf, it's what's left. It's all that's left of the star that used to be. It lost. Let's say it's a carbon core now. There's no more hydrogen, no more helium. It's all gone, wasted by the main sequence and the red giant stages. We can see that the outer layer is all gone. All that's left is the core. So we have a white dwarf star, kind of small. And all that's left is the core of the star, technically, but it's keeping on there. It's doing a little bit fusions around the fusion shells, but it's working out mostly. It's surviving. Then we get to the medium high stars. Oh, why? Anyways, mostly it's somewhat the same, except there's a few changes. Now, when we get to the protostar main sequence, we see everything's working out. Then we get to not the red giant, but the red supergiant. Now, the red supergiant is just a little bit different. See, as I would say, the red supergiant is somewhat the same as the red giant, but it gets way more huger. It exhausted all its hydrogen molecules, somewhat like the red giant. But in a sense, now with the red supergiant, it's one of the biggest, obviously, by size comparison. But it is not massive. Like, okay, usually when you say massive, I mean, like, when I say, I mean, like, huge or something. But in this sense, I would say the mass or the density of it somewhat lacking. But unlike the red giant, the red supergiant isn't, well, is not as stable. The next stage is supernova. Now, this is an explosion, like, boom, everything, kaboom. Like this thing goes boom. We say goodbye to the light.
Supernova is an explosion that occurs when a star.
It's an explosion when a star that occurs
runs out of fuel and fusion stops.
when it runs out of the fuel and the fuel of the star. Everything's gone. Fusion's not working. Just boom. Now, with this, however,
without the outward pressure from the fusion in the core, there's nothing to counteract the inward pressure of gravity. What happens first is that the outside of the star swells into a red supergiant. The core of the star begins shrinking and grows hotter and denser. For a while, a new series of nuclear reactions that turn the core to iron occur, which temporarily stops the collapse of the core. But it is only temporary. When the core contains mostly iron, it has nothing left.
So, yeah. Now, usually after supernova, there's only two options left. Now, this is usually dependent on how big not big, the mass of the star is. Now, we have the neutron star where it stabilizes. It keeps the fusion going from what is left of the supernova, it is in a small white, somewhat yellow star. It's not gonna go. It just stays in the most stable possible like state. Like this is the best possible route for those big stars because you don't go into the other stage. Now the other stage is the black hole. Now the black hole is when the gravity wins. It collapses on itself. It's like taking everything in. And now this is like philosophy stuff right here. Black hole, gravity collapses on itself, causing a singularity in the space-time continuum, kind of. Now, the black hole is, in a sense, just gravity, like just gravity in a physical sense. Like this is the only time you'll see gravity. You will actually see gravity. Like usually with gravity, you just feel it, but black hole, it's kind of there. It sucks, but that deal. Now, when we get to the huge, large stars, it's kind of the same thing, except the end result is usually a black dwarf. Now, dwarf. Now, usually when these. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do the stages. Now, there's protostar, main sequence, red supergiant, supernova. Now, there's no neutron star. There's probably a black hole. I don't know really, but the next stage, I have to be honest, is the black dwarf. Now, this is the rarest thing you'll ever see. I don't even think it exists mostly, but hypothetically, it's out there. We know it is. Now, with the black dwarf star, it is, in a sense, no heat, no brightness. It's just a black star. Like, there's no, you don't see anything. The gravity itself, it's somewhat lacking. You don't really, somewhat like the shadow. Here's the light. This is what usually the other stars are. And then shadow. That's what was the form of the star. Now, usually when stars get to this stage, well, only the huge stars get to this stage. That's it. That's the final stage. Now, for most of the stars I was talking about, we had the super low mass, we had the low to medium, we had the medium to high, and just huge stars in general. Now, I don't really know what our sun classifies as, but if I were, to make it to say where it would go, I would say it's either in the low to medium stars or medium to high. Now, I have to be honest here. Our sun is one of the youngest stars. Usually, you can tell the age of a star by its mass. That's the best way to get their age, and its color is usually tells you what the surface temperature is. Now, the life cycle of stars usually it lasts for a while. It's usually from the beginning of the universe there was stars. I mean, we're not the center of the universe. Actually, our star is one of the outer rims, kind of the youngest. But we're still here. The star is still alive, still bright. And it's in its main sequence. Only the second stage, 90% of its adulthood. Mostly all stars spend 90% of their adulthood or star life in the main sequence. Well, except for the low mass, super low mass stars. Those things, they don't last that long. No offense. I mean, they're just usually when you say you want a star, you want something big like our sun. Now, obviously, I'm not talking really hypothetical here or scientific, but knowing the life cycle of stars isn't all that bad. You see if we know the life cycle of stars, we can also guess it most of the ages of stars we see, what we observe. Now, should we do this? We can use the stars' lives, like just in a hypothetical sense, to get a better gauge at the age of the universe. And I think that's important as long as we know things out there. I mean, as long as you are interested in astronomy a little bit, uh, this is a good subject. Stars, they help you in discovering the age of the universe, anyways, or a little bit to the reason why life exists mostly. I mean, it does create the light out there, creates the heat. It's kind of like an energy source to the planet Earth. But, you know, gotta love stars, man. Now, this is Rushdie signing off. Sorry, Mr. Hincher. This is a long video. Very sorry. Kind of like 16 minutes. I'll cut back. I mean, I made a lot of bloopers. I am sorry for that. I'm not a good, I'm not a very good video guy. Oh, signing off. See ya.